Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video from Oman Talks NRL SuperCoach. In today's video, we're going to be going through my first draft of the NRL SuperCoach 2023 preseason. So if you guys enjoy it, do please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get straight into it. So here is the draft as it stands. Remember, the salary cap has moved up to $11.45 million, and I've got remaining salary of $37,000 in this particular draft. And I'll go through this position by position. So starting off with the hookers, Brandon Smith, probably don't need to speak about him too much. Starting number 9 for the Roosters, moving over from the Melbourne Storm at a sub 500k price tag, when it's a guy that we know in the past has gone over that 600k mark, averaging over 65 as well. You know, remember 2 seasons ago when he was just scoring tries for fun. Hopefully Brandon Smith turns back into that player. So I think at that sub 500k price tag is probably going to be a pretty good bet. Now, Reece Robson in my other hooker spot, ideally I would go for Harry Grant. He's my favorite. Could be one of my favorite players, I think, in the entire NRL. Him and Dylan Brown probably, but he's very, very expensive. And so I've had to kind of sacrifice on him and instead go for Reece Robson, who still is pretty pricey at 678k. But the Cowboys have got a dream draw for the first 8 weeks of the season. And I know Robson was the third highest averaging hooker of last year. So I'm kind of just thinking maybe I can take a gamble and not go for Grant at the start. Who knows how brave I'll feel come round 1. But for the time being, I've stuck with Reece Robson, more just for the draw and also for that cheaper price tag than Harry Grant. Front row forward, definitely a position that I've looked to go cheaper with, and there's a slide that I'll get onto after I go through the entire team, but it kind of just illustrates that the front row forward position really isn't the high point scoring position that we may have previously seen years ago. Now it's more about the outside backs, the fullbacks, the halfbacks, the centre wings, the 5'8". Those are the positions that we want to see the high scoring players. Front row forward just isn't quite that position. Maybe Joe Tarpany was a bit of an exception last season, and maybe I'm a bit bitter because I didn't own him, but I've gone cheap here with Dan Saifiti, Lindsay Collins as my 2 starting front row forward, Sean Kepi and Davey Moali as my 2 bench front row forwards. Saifiti I've gone for just with the Knights as good draw. He is one of those props who can score tries, so hopefully in the first 6 weeks of the season when the Knights have got a good draw, if he's able to score 1 or 2 meat pies, maybe we'll see that price tag increase. And so that's kind of the reason why I've gone for him. And he also has previously been a SuperCoach gun, averaging over 60. Lindsay Collins at 455k, again, quite cheap. Should be one of the starting front row forwards for the Roosters. He has had a few injuries in the last few seasons, but I'm just hoping that he can kind of get over all of that, because he is a player who I feel is getting better and better with every season. And so with Takiaho going, there's probably minutes on offer there. You know, Waerea-Hargreaves isn't getting any younger. So I'm hoping that Collins takes another step up, and that means more minutes and hopefully more SuperCoach points, and maybe he can offer some value there. Kepi should be one of the starting props for the Manly Sea Eagles. The talk is that Marty Tapau is kind of on the outer with that team, and Kepi looked pretty good in patches last season as well. He seems like one of those players when he comes onto the field or he takes a hit up, he's very energetic, very lively. And I'm hoping what that means is that it translates potentially into tackle breaks and maybe get some decent minutes. And at 275k, I feel like it's kind of low risk, and hopefully he offers some value. Moali is probably just going to be one of those bench forwards for the Rabbitohs. You know, Mark Nichols has left the club for the Dolphins, so hopefully that opens up a prop spot on the bench there for Moali. So at 235k, again, kind of someone I've just put in there on the basis that he gets maybe 20 to 25 minutes in the early parts and maybe for the majority of the season. Now, second row forward, because I love emotional roller coasters, screaming at the telly and venting my frustrations on Twitter, I've decided to elect with Dave Fifita. Sorry, I couldn't keep a straight face when I said all of that. Look, Fifita we know is a guy, I'm sure you're all aware of the highs that he can get to because he's such a dynamic tackle breaking machine. You can score a try out of nothing, but then you also look at those times when you feel like, you know, the Titans aren't using him correctly, they're not giving him enough early ball, or he's just not getting the ball. You know, Kieran Foran moving to the club is probably a good thing for Fifita, although the talk over the last couple of days is actually that Tanner Boyd is going to play on Fifita's side of the park and not Kieran Foran. Now, this might not necessarily be a bad thing, because apparently, I believe Tanner Boyd and Fifita played in high school together. I think, is it Keeper Park? Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But also Wilfred Catfish on Twitter. If any of you guys don't know him, he was the 2016 SuperCoach winner, so he knows a thing or two about SuperCoach. He actually pulled some stats together. In the 3 games, I think that Fifita played over 77 minutes alongside Tanner Boyd last season. He had an average of 77. Now that's enough confirmation bias for me. So that's why I've started with Dave Fifita. Ideally, Cam Murray is who I'd have at that premier second row forward position, but we don't have an infinite budget, so I've decided to go for Fifita at this point in time. Luke Garner feels fairly obvious in my opinion as well. I mean, at 435k, you're not taking a massive gamble in terms of price, and he hopefully gets Kickout's starting spot on the edge there for the Panthers. And I think when you're getting a starting position there for Panthers, who are super attacking and just obviously the best team in this competition, Luke Garner feels pretty good as a preseason choice, who hopefully maybe makes $100,000, but could also turn into that maybe a pretty safe 50 to 55, and hopefully some cash generation there. Katoa from the Melbourne Storm, I'm not super confident on. I've just kind of got him in there at the moment as a price point thing, just to kind of enable the rest of the squad. Obviously moving from the Warriors to the Storm, now that the Storm have lost 2 of their back rowers to the Dolphins, I'm hoping that Katoa can make a step up, get one of the starting spots, and hopefully in the Melbourne Bellamy system gets a little bit more consistency. I think that's ultimately what I want to see, because I think we all know that this guy is he's definitely got the ceiling and he can be destructive on his day. Think back to 2020 when, in SuperCoach he was a great cash cow, but we didn't quite see that in the last kind of 2 seasons or so. So I'm hoping that maybe in Melbourne he can regain some form and some consistency, and at 411k may be a good option. But look, that's definitely a position that I could very much change around. The 3 other spots, Jermaine Hopgood, Ray Stone, and Jack Howarth. Howarth I'll quickly touch on. Kind of just got him in there as a placeholder at the moment. That could be someone like Sean Bloor. Maybe if Howarth gets a center spot for the Storm, he may be great as a 200k dual option. But he may be someone who very much changes come the actual round 1 squad. Ray Stone should be getting a starting spot in the pack for the Dolphins. So at 250k, it feels kind of low risk, I think, on taking a punt on him. And Jermaine Hopgood, I think, is pretty much going to be locked in for the preseason as well. Ryan Madison is going to be out for the first 3 rounds of the season, I believe, due to suspension. And so Hopgood should be starting at either lock or in the back row. I believe it's lock where he may start the first 3 rounds of the season. And then when Madison comes back, Madison may just take one of the back row spots that IPAP left, and Hopgood stays at lock. If not, maybe he gets some decent minutes. But I think at 300k, you're probably taking pretty low risk on Hopgood, who's probably going to get some decent minutes to open the season, which should hopefully mean some good cash generation. Now, before I quickly speak about the backs, I'll quickly just mention this table below me, which is what I've got there is I've put percentages of the amount of money I've put into each position relative to the entire salary cap. And I just wanted to point this out, particularly on the halfback, because whilst 15% looks low, second row forward and center wing are more than that. That's 2 spots taking up that 15%, and same goes for fullback. I've really tried to stack the fullback and halfback spot because this is, in my opinion, the positions where the highest SuperCoach points come from, and you've got the highest upside, captain-worthy guys. So for halfback, I've started with Cleary and Hines, the 2 best halfbacks of last season. Cleary's probably been the best SuperCoach halfback for the last few years now, and so whilst they're very, very expensive, when I'm not 100% certain about other cheaper halfbacks, maybe Sam Walker, maybe Sean Johnson, based on how he's looking at some of those Instagram pictures going around at the moment, maybe Tanner Boyd, if he's goal kicking and starting for the Titans. But whilst that's all unknown to me, I just want to lock in who I think are the 2 best halfbacks. So that's why I've gone with Cleary and Hines at the moment. Josh Schuster as the bench 5'8", feels pretty locked in, should be starting number 6 for the Sea Eagles, now that Kieran Foran has moved to the Titans. And at 240k, a guy who, not last season, but the season before, was close to averaging 60 and a great cash cow, could be a very solid option, either in your bench 5'8", or also in your bench second row forward. He does have some handy dual status as well. And Matt Burton as my starting 5'8". I couldn't quite stretch up to Cam Munster or Dylan Brown. Sad face, couldn't get Dylan Brown. So I had to do a 50-50 between Matt Burton and Adam Dewey. Both I kind of view very similarly, quite talismanic for teams that are on the poorer end of the scale, both goal kicking. But I do think the Bulldogs, with their signings of Reid Marnie, Kickow, new coach and Cameron Ciraldo, do think that there is going to be some genuine improvement there. And Matt Burton showed in patches of last season, well, large patches actually, he can be a SuperCoach gun, averaging 70 plus. If you can pick him up for sub 600k, knowing that he's goal kicking, Bulldogs do have some pretty good games to open the season as well. I do like Matt Burton as a pick. Definitely not locked into that one. Could be Adam Dewey. I think Adam Dewey's opening 3 are better than Matt Burton's, but I'm kind of viewing Burton a little bit more longer term here. Hence why I'm leaning slightly towards him at this point. Now with my center wing, traditionally center wing is where we have a lot of our cheapies and cash cows, but I always do like to start with one kind of higher to mid-priced guy. So at the moment I have started with Brian To'o. Just the reason for that is also because of, these higher priced center wings are more known quantities than a lot of these cheapy cash cows. And so you have a little bit less inconsistency going with some of these more known quantities. So Brian To'o playing for the Panthers, who are an attacking juggernaut. I know the right wing isn't the ideal side. You probably want to be on the left wing for the Panthers, but look, the Panthers can score points from anywhere. Brian To'o, I do think, is coming in underpriced based on that he did have an underperforming 2022. So To'o I do like. I did try to initially think if I could fit in someone like Val Holmes to kind of tap into that Cowboys draw, but I just found him way too expensive. Whereas To'o, definitely was coming in a lot cheaper than that. So that's kind of why I've landed on him for this point in time. Isaac Thompson and Nickel Klukstad feel pretty locked in for me as well. Thompson should be getting the right wing spot for the Rabbitohs while Tane Milne is suspended, but very easily he could just take that position for his own, and Tane Milne might not go back into the 17. And I think a right winger for the Rabbitohs, very good attacking team, at that price feels pretty safe, so I'm going for him at this point in time. And Nickel Klukstad should be starting fullback for the Warriors as well. We generally do like fullbacks for Supercoach. They set up a lot of the tries, scored the tries themselves, good base stats as well, taking hit-ups. So Nickel Klukstad, with all those qualities, if he gets fullback, 327k, it feels quite safe in my opinion. Tabuai Fidow, not as locked into him in that spot. That position I have toyed with maybe Charlie Staines, maybe Tommy Till. Just stuck with the hammer at the moment on the premise that he gets the number 1 spot for the Dolphins. Tessie New has recently joined the club. Jermaine Asako is there as well. So there is some risk that, he doesn't actually end up getting the fullback spot. I do have 37k in the bank, so potentially have some wiggle room there. I think that I don't think I can stretch quite to Charlie Staines. Maybe I'll go for a Tommy Talau instead. But at the time being, I've put in Tabuai Fidow on the basis he gets that fullback shirt for the Dolphins. And just on the bench, Khan Pereira from the Titans should hopefully get one of the wing spots that Greg Marzhew has vacated now that he has moved to the Knights. So apparently Khan Pereira won the Queensland Cup Winger of the Year, or was the Titans Winger of the Year in the junior system. Correct me if I'm wrong with that one, but it seems as though there's some good raps on the kid. So hopefully, coming in at a bargain price of 201k, if he gets a starting spot, there may be some cash generation there. Similar story with Alamotti and Hodgson, to be honest. Alamotti could take one of the Bulldogs' centre positions. Corey Allen has now moved to the Roosters, and I think the overall depth in the Bulldogs' backs is a little bit limited. So Alamotti is a highly touted junior. Hopefully he gets a upgrade to the first grade squad, and hopefully a nice cheapy cash cow for us. And Hodgson from the Knights has been tipped to potentially be playing fullback while Ponga moves to 5'8". Look, if that's confirmed, if that's the case, if we're getting a 200k fullback who's starting and has got a really good draw, as the Knights do for the first 6 weeks, I'm willing to take a punt on that as well. So that's why he's made his way into the squad there. Finally, Tedesco and Latrell. So Tedesco, I don't really think I need to say too much more about him. One of his best qualities is availability, durability. He seems to always be fit. We're seeing issues with Turbo, with Ponga having injury setbacks in the preseason. Even despite all of that, Teddy was in my team, and I really find it hard to see when he's going to leave my preseason and round 1 team, to be honest. One of the best Supercoach players we've had for years, and so feel very comfortable starting with Teddy. And because of those issues with other fullbacks, originally I was thinking of maybe Turbo, but if he looks unfit or a doubt for round 1, and then with Manly having the bye in round 2, could make it risky to go with Turbo from the start. So instead of had to take some money out of other positions, such as the front row forward, such as sacrificing Harry Grant down to Reece Robson, to then upgrade Turbo to Latrell Mitchell. Now Latrell, I know the Rabbitohs have got a very tough start to the season, but I mentioned it in that draw video that I put together. The team like the Rabbitohs, they're going to be challenging for the top 4, challenging for the premiership. They're a very settled team. They haven't had a lot of changes in the off-season. Latrell is, in my opinion, just going to get better and better. He's goal kicking, and he's proved last year that he can score big against the big teams. He scored 100 plus against the Panthers. He scored a 76 against the Cowboys. Pretty sure he scored like 120 something against Parramatta. Like he was just putting up scores for fun. And so I really do feel like I don't want to miss out on that. I know I'm paying a lot, 889k. But I think the fact that he's goal kicking and playing for a top side, in my opinion, makes me feel very comfortable as well, starting with Latrell. So again, putting a lot of money in those 2 fullback spots, similar to the halfback spot, but fullback spot, in my opinion, is the premier position to target in Supercoach. And to kind of illustrate that point, I've just put this little table together, which is a list of positions that made their way into the top 20 averaging players over the last 3 seasons. As you can see, fullback and halfback were the top 2 spots in 2022, and fullbacks topped in 2020 and also in 2021. So you can kind of see why I'm willing to spend big in the fullback spot. It really is the best position to target in Supercoach, in my opinion. And then really the outside backs really shine. You know, you've got the halfback there, centre wing, 5'8", and then you've also even got centres to an extent as well. So I feel very comfortable going heavy in my halfback spot, my fullback spot, having a couple of guns as well in Matt Burton and Brian To'o in my 5'8" centre wing spots, and why I'm also willing to take some money out of my front row forward. You can see the front row forward there over the past 2-3 seasons really hasn't been as relevant for those top guys in Supercoach. I know Joe Tarpany had an exceptional 2022 season, but at the start of the season when I'm looking to maybe prioritise other spots, that's kind of why I'm looking at front row forward as one of those positions that I will compromise on. And the last thing that I wanted to quickly touch on as well when looking at the first draft was actually trying to think about how I'm going to start managing the buys, because now obviously 2023 we're going to have the situation where one team each week will have a buy, and so we just need to be mindful of that when planning our teams. And so what I've got here is a screenshot from my buy tracker / team planning spreadsheet. Subtle plug for that. If you are interested in that, do check out the video in the description below with a tutorial, and also send me an expression of interest email at amantalks1@gmail.com. But essentially what this kind of outlines is kind of your team from round 1 and kind of what it looks like in future rounds in terms of buys. So you can see for round 1 it's okay. Round 2 I've got 2 buy players, but they're Sean Kepi and Josh Schuster, so they're kind of easier to cover positions in my opinion. Round 3 and 4 is where things get tricky though. Round 3 you've got Penrith with a buy. So you can automatically see I've got Luke Garner, I've got Nathan Cleary, and I'm going to have Brian To'o unavailable for that week. So that's why I'm happy to have someone like Nico Hines, you know, an equivalent gun halfback, step in for that week. Luke Garner can maybe be swapped with the Jermaine Hopgood. Brian To'o, it's harder to kind of match him, but I'd have to just pick probably one of my other cheaper centre wings. But, you know, if Paul Alamotti, Bailey Hodgson are playing, they each have good matchups. So this is something that you can think about early on when planning your kind of round 1 teams, is knowing when some of your bigger guns or when any of your important players have a bye, how you're going to manage that. For example, round 4, Brandon Smith, Lindsay Collins, and James Tedesco all have a bye in my team. So I think it's important that I've got someone like equivalent quality in Latrell to step in for round 4 in my front row forward spot. A little bit more dicey, but maybe Sean Kepi I can call upon for that week. Try to save a trade there instead of using trades in my front row forward. And Reece Robson's got the Titans in round 4, so it's a pretty good matchup. And so I think at that point, you're trying to then look for your 4th reserve. And that could be maybe another centre wing, maybe Alamotti got the Warriors away. So I think this is something that's worth thinking about when putting your round 1 team together, how you're going to maybe start managing the buys. But I'm going to end the video there. Don't want it to go for too long. Hopefully you guys found that useful. Let me know your thoughts as well about my team, any players that you're interested in. I'm willing to respond to all the comments and have a read through and have any discussions as well on your teams. So do drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoy the video, do please thumbs up, really helps the channel out. And if you want to see more content in the 2023 preseason, just drop a subscription to the channel. And I'll see you all in the next video.